Welcome everybody, here Brady from BGDBX, and we are back for another breakdown, hopefully a quicker one than last night, even though it was really good. Try not to go too long with these, but we have Hurricane Humberto, Major Hurricane Humberto, and we also have PTC 9, otherwise known as 94L, or Future Tropical Storm Imelda, likely within the next day or two. So without further ado, let's get going. And first, we're going to take a look at Humberto, because I think that's most fascinating right now. As you can see, this is 94L, PTC 9, still organizing. As you can see clearly, it has a lot of work to do still. Not that it can't quickly do that, given what the environment could potentially be soon, but for the moment, Humberto is the story because we talked about it last night. We said that, right, it was starting to rapidly intensify, it looked like, and certainly it did throughout the day. And we saw this go from a 65-mile-an-hour tropical storm. I mean, yesterday we were talking about this thing earlier. It was a 45-mile-per-hour tropical storm. If you do hear anything in the background, by the way, that is just my puppy. Don't worry about it. It was just a 45-mile-per-hour tropical storm early in the day yesterday. And now we're looking at a 145-mile-per-hour Cat 4 hurricane. So this is quite a turn of events that wasn't necessarily unexpected, so to say, but the rate of rapid intensification certainly rather impressive. Up there with Aaron in terms of how impressive the rapid intensification was. And honestly, a pretty similar spot to where it happened with Aaron as well. So something that to be of note. I think as we keep going here, one thing to watch is the upper level pieces here with Humberto. That's what we're watching here on the mid-level satellite. And I think one thing we're seeing is possibly an eyewall replacement cycle. It's possible. Unfortunately, not much recon data, so they're going to have to continue to go with satellite estimates, I believe, until at least tomorrow, I think. I could be wrong, but or we could be seeing also, is notice some shear from the north here as it continues to work in a little bit more favorable position. As you can see, the upper level jet, the very favorable environment here, as we have this jet streak to the north here, and we also have this upper level low well placed. So we talked about that dual enhanced outflow, and so as we continue to progress here, what we're going to see is this will continue to slowly move to the west and eventually west-northwest. And what we'll see is this continue to work itself into an even more favorable environment. I think a little bit being pressed on just a little bit over the last few hours or so, which is why we're not seeing the same rate of rapid intensification. It's also hard to continue to rapidly intensify, a small core system like you're seeing now continuously. It's without at least a couple of hiccups. As great as the environment was for intensification, that it does, take a lot for it to go from, 65 to, 160 without any hiccups, so to say, that category 5 status. Still rather impressive, and I do think this will get to category 5 status at some, if not tonight, then or overnight tonight. I will say likely tomorrow at some point we'll see this thing achieve Cat 5 status for those that care too much, because those that care enough from science perspective, even though this is unlikely to make landfall in the U.S., very unlikely. I guess you have to keep an eye on for Bermuda for any impacts, but I think it will split the uprights potentially down the line with the track. Is, again, look at this position of the upper level low here, the upper level divergence to the north here, this developing upper level anticyclone that we see happening. And as this continues to progress, I think what we'll see is a continuance of the intensification, and I think this could end up being the strongest storm in the Atlantic, all said and done this weekend, in terms of this whole season. And we did have Aaron a Category 5 already, which should be noted. So I think one thing to watch in the meantime is any eyewall replacement cycles potentially in the very short term. See if this continues to press on our storm a little bit. That could be playing a part, but you are seeing the outflow continue to expand here to the western side, which is good news for Humberto itself for intensification. You can see this expansion as well. If you play the loop, you'll notice that continuing to expansiveness to the northwest, but you can see it getting shunted a little bit potentially, the outflow to the northeast there, but even still rather impressive. So potentially, again, some structural changes that's just trying to hold up is certainly possible. So it's not necessarily a bad environment, so to say. It's just really hard to continue intensifying in a 145 mile per hour hurricane. But if the environment calls for it, it calls for it. So, and I think we'll continue to see that over the course of the next 24, 48 hours with Humberto. Now, let's slide to 94L. We're seeing a lot of topic of conversation with track intensity. Let's go to both, so to say. Let's go to, again, we'll go to what it looks like right now. You can see there's Humberto to the east, and looks like just to the north of Cuba. That is where we're seeing that low-level center. Somewhere along the area, you can see multiple low-level centers. I think that is where we will see it emerge, so to say, with this system. I think that is where we will look at the low level center to be, and I think we should continue to watch for, as this emerges. Where will this exactly organize, right? Because we're still wrapping up vorticity, so to say. We're still wrapping up the upper level energy here, or sorry, low level energy, and it's continuing to organize itself. As I remove my puppy from a situation, if you have one, you know. And so as we continue to watch here in terms of the 94L, I think we'll have to see how quickly does this is it able to tighten up and wrap up. I think that's the biggest thing to watch in the short term, because that will define whether or not how quickly we can see intensification, because I think the environment will eventually call for it. We'll take a look at Mimic here. We'll take a look at the PWA as well, and you'll notice looks like it's starting to wrap up just to that just off the tip of Cuba there, just to the northwest of Hispaniola. That is where I think the most action is in terms of where we'll see that center develop. And then as we slide here, let's take a look. If it lets me, you take a look and notice we'll go to some of the guidance now in the environment. Notice that is where you see PTC 9. And then notice it has it organizing pretty fast. It says tomorrow is the day for it. Like we said at this time last night, a little bit later this time last night in the morning, we said that about 24 to 36 hours, I think we would get a tropical cyclone. And it seems like it's going to be about the case. So within roughly that time frame. So I guess maybe I did a okay job. We'll see if we get that. If not, it will be pretty close to that time frame. By tomorrow or tomorrow night, I think there's a decent shot we have a tropical cyclone. And then as we can see here, we'll notice that we'll continue to see Humberto move to the west. And then we'll have to watch for how strong does Imelda get as well, future Imelda likely. How strong does Imelda get as well, because that will play a part in its interaction. I've seen some pretty, we're not going to see a full Fujiwhara, so to say, but I've seen some people very, very well respected say this is no interaction whatsoever. And I don't know how you can be a meteorologist, in my opinion, and say that these two are not going to have any interaction. I guess it depends on the exact scenario that unfolds. But if you take a look at the 850 millibar and you watch these two, you can see that both of these two, the connection and the vorticity that happens there, these two will get close enough to each other to have some, minor Fujiwhara effect. And that plays an absolute factor. These will absolutely be close enough, as you can see, within, looks like about, within 500 miles of each other, these two systems look roughly. So roughly, if I had a guess, and you'll see that these two do almost bounce off of each other. That's certainly something that is, one of those scenarios we look at. is where they get close enough, and the stronger one, as you can see, starts to bounce off. But that's not to say that Imelda still isn't going to be able to intensify at the same time as well. You'll notice it's not like we're going to see these two wrap up, become one, so to say, or one wraps around the other. We're not going to see that in this case. We're going to see, like, it seems most likely that we're going to see Humberto interact a little bit, potentially tug, pull, whatever it could. There could be some interaction in terms of the track we see, and then we'll also see Humberto then take off to the east after that, and then we'll have to watch to see if there are any impacts for Bermuda. But then we notice Imelda. There's certainly some scenarios here that don't end up good in terms of impacts. And notice I haven't talked about exact impacts too much because I'm not fully on board yet with there being, certain scenarios that people are latching onto. If this is more complex, so to say, than some would lead on. And we have to watch for to see how strong Imelda will get and where exactly it will be placed as well. Notice the upper level environment here is going to start to get more and more favorable as we see potentially that upper level divergence to the north, depending on where it's placed. I think we could see that really benefit Imelda here. So let's take a look and notice. All right, so this, you can see that is where Imelda is off the coast of Florida, potentially impacting Florida. We'll have to keep a close eye on that for people on the east coast of Florida. Certainly some wind and rain is possible. Landfall, I wouldn't say is most likely as of right now, but never say never. In terms of the future track, and it's just a few days from now, so I would be preparing as if a tropical storm or a hurricane is coming onto the east coast of Florida. Not the ends of the world, but if you take proper precautions, okay? I don't think it's going to be a devastating situation, so to say, there, but please, prepare properly. You've had plenty of situations like this before if you've lived there for a while, so prepare accordingly. For the outer part of a hurricane or a tropical storm. And then we have to see here in this upper level environment. So that's where Imelda is, right there off the coast of Florida. And then that upper level environment, like we're talking about, it could potentially work itself in the right entrance region of the jet stream there, of that jet streak to the north, and then we'll have to keep an eye on to see if that could allow this to intensify. Yes, there's going to be dry air wrapping in from the backside, but this could turn into a little bit of a baroclinic situation here. So even though we'll have backside trying to wrap itself around, and this could turn itself into a half cane at some point next week, we'll have to keep an eye on how strong can this get with this jet streak to the north to help spin the top faster. And you'll also have Humberto, as you can see, close by as well, but still far enough for it to become strong enough to do its own thing, potentially. I think it could be limited some with the outflow of Humberto. I think that certainly could be the case, and that will be something we'll have to keep an eye on. But as we talked about with the favorable environment for Humberto, I do think it will get more favorable for Imelda as well. Very warm sea surface temperatures and an increasingly favorable upper level environment as we get to early next week, I do believe, as well. And even this weekend, potentially, it could get more favorable for development. So that is something that it will certainly play a factor. And the question is, where exactly, when does this make landfall? Does it make landfall? To me, it doesn't matter if it makes landfall or not, because the impacts, if it doesn't make landfall right away, could be just as catastrophic in terms of the rainfall. This could be a deadly rainfall situation setting up here for people in the southeastern U.S., regardless if this is a Category 1 hurricane or a Category 3 hurricane. I don't think if it were a Category 3 hurricane now, or for example, if it were to, exceed potential, the current National Hurricane Center forecast, which is calling for a Cat 1 at the moment. That's the first initial cone. So before we even have a closed center, you get an idea of any intensification bouts. It's hard to say exactly how strong this will likely get, but if this were, let's say a major hurricane, then we'd certainly be talking about surge, but that's not the point. I think the point is the rainfall for days and days and days on end, and the potential, even if it's not major, the potential storm surge for days and days and days, because what we could see then is a catastrophic rainfall situation in the Carolinas, Georgia, potentially into the mid-Atlantic, depending on how it evolves. And, we could be looking at a case where up the coast, we have to watch for some sort of flooding rain impact. But, this was an OZ run. Take a look at an 18Z run, for example, then. There's so many different solutions that could possibly happen. Take a look at 12Z. This similar stalls, comes up and moves. And there's just so many different scenarios that we could possibly see. And I think it all comes back down to then, how do Humberto and Imelda interact with each other as well? And then what do the steering currents look like after those two do their little tango song and dance? Humberto likely gets sent off into the open Atlantic after, and then what does the song and dance that these two do? What does that look like? What does it look like after? Is something we'll have to keep an eye on, because certainly looks like that the blocking is going to build back in after Humberto catches its ride out to sea, and then Imelda kind of gets stuck in the steering currents potentially, and if it gets stuck under that ridge, that's certainly a problem, because that means it's going to be U.S. impacts, more U.S. impacts, even if it hadn't made a landfall yet. So this is a strong scenario as my dog squeaks away in the background. My point is that there's plenty of different scenarios, and don't get tied to one yet. There's potential situation where we could see catastrophic rainfall for portions of the southeast U.S. Prepare as such. Prepare for significant rainfall in the Carolinas, potentially even into the mid-Atlantic. You have a little bit more time to prepare there, I would say. But North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Eastern Florida, start preparing for significant rainfall, but especially Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, start preparing for significant rainfall, potentially even into the mountains of the Carolinas as well. There is going to be a chance for very significant rainfall that could produce some catastrophic effects, potentially. I'm not ready to quite buy into that yet, but it's certainly a possibility on the table. We could also just be looking at, a major flooding event that's maybe not catastrophic, so to say, but certainly causes the potential life-threatening flooding situation. So even if it's not, a life-altering event, it doesn't mean it still can't cause problems. So we'll have to watch for that as well. Again, in terms of exact track, it's still to be determined. But again, that's not what I want the takeaway to be right now. I want the takeaway to be prepared and follow closely of all these little things. Again, I don't want to tell you guys how to prepare, what to do, or how to alert friends and family. I try not to play that role too much. I try to give some tips and what I think could be helpful potentially, but I try not to play that public adversary role of communicating exactly what you need to do. This is, I don't know everybody's situation and all that, and your local officials will know better than I will in terms of that stuff. So, but expect flooding rainfalls and expect a change in track, regardless, because model guidance is not necessarily fit to do its best job in this kind of scenario. Again, we'll see how strong will Humberto get, how strong will Imelda get, how will these two interact with each other, and then from there, we'll see what the impacts could potentially be. Even though it's close by, within 5 days, there's a lot of uncertainties right now. Hopefully this helps. Until next time, peace, everybody.